Evening, Cherries fans, and welcome to the latest in our opposition preview shows here on Up the Cherries in all departments. After our 2-1 win against QPR at Dean Court, we travel to the Welsh Capital to take on Cardiff City side, a side who were at one point last season threatened to break into the top six under Mick McCarthy, and a side who at the moment sit just outside the top six after 7 games. Before I welcome on my guest for this opposition preview, firstly, thank you to our sponsors, Dental on the Banks, and here's a bit about them now. Please do remember to visit www.dentalonthebanks.co.uk to book yourself in. To preview this game, it is a pleasure to welcome onto the show Sunday Mirror Sports and Reach PLC sports editor Darren Witcoop. How are you doing, Darren?
Hi, Craig. Hi. Good, thank you. Good, thanks.
Good to have you on the show, mate. So, firstly, before we go on to the football, do tell us a little bit more about your journey in journalism and your role at the Sunday Mirror and Reach.
Yeah, so I basically started off very young in the local paper in Cardiff, and then worked my way up there, then started working for agencies. So I worked around the country. I worked in Manchester and then London, and then I've come back down to London again after a spat away back in Manchester. So been back and forth. I was freelancing for a little while for the national papers, covering all the London Premier League clubs and Championship clubs. And then I got offered a position to go on staff about 3-4 years ago, and it's gone from there, basically.
Fantastic. And do you get to see most of the Cardiff City games?
No, unfortunately, not as much as I'd like to go to. Obviously, with the pandemic, nobody saw the games apart from on TV. Work constraints make it difficult because I work a lot of evenings, obviously midweek games, and I work Saturdays as well. So it's hard, but I'll try and watch as much as I can. Although I'm not the greatest omen. I think I've seen them live 4 or 5 times in London, and they've lost every game. Last 2 games I've seen them play, so maybe it's best I stay away.
Are you going to Cardiff tomorrow?
No, I'm not. No, I'll be working.
That's fine. I was offering to give you a lift there. Cardiff last season surged up the table when Mick McCarthy took over from Neil Harris. Fans at first were quite sceptical, considering he was plying his trade in Cyprus only a few weeks before. How did he turn things around so quickly?
Well, the fans were sceptical, including myself. I think the appointment was a real surprise. There was a lot of talk about a change of philosophy at the club, because under Neil Warnock previously, as you probably remember, then Neil Harris, the style was very aggressive, up and under, long throws, direct. And there was a lot of talk about let's change for that mindset and look to bring a younger manager in and change the philosophy. Didn't happen. Mick McCarthy came in, which took a lot of people by surprise. People weren't happy. The supporters weren't enamoured by the appointment. But he stopped the rot because he won a terrible run at that stage. And I think the board were thinking we need to stay in the Championship rather than the playoffs, which was the aim at the start of the season. He came in, I think 9-game unbeaten run, I think it was. They won 6 or 7 in a row, I think I have that list. There was a lot of talk of the playoffs. they were on the cusp. I think they got in after a couple of times towards the end. I think they beat Bournemouth, didn't they, towards the end of last season? And then they actually fell away after that sort of period, really. But the manager got a contract, which he had won by rights, really, by winning games. And it's gone from there, really. So, yeah, he's still in the position.
And he's done a fantastic job. Of course, there was on Tuesday the defeat by Coventry. Of course, what was your verdict of that game? Did you manage to see a little bit of that and highlights?
I actually saw all of it for my sins, and it was. I haven't seen every game Cardiff played this year, but I watched Bristol City the game before that, and they were very poor. I'd say they were worse. And against Forest, they played well in the second half and won that game. I mean, Coventry was probably their worst performance I can imagine this season, because it was just, there was no fluidity in the play. They created one or two chances. Coventry were a better team, much better team. Should have won by 2 or 3 goals. Cardiff just looked really sluggish, but they're missing a few players. And that probably cost them in the end, because it was a poor showing, really, which the club and McCarthy has admitted.
Do you expect them to, or should we expect a backlash though after that match?
Well, I mean, they can't play as badly as that now. Obviously, they are at home in front of their own supporters. Although, ironically, they're actually stronger away from home than they are at home. They had that's the first defeat they've had from away for, I can remember, a long, long time, going back to last season. They drew a few, obviously, but they're just very hard to beat on the road. At home, they've been caught out quite a few times, finding it hard on the counter-attack. The defence is not the quickest, strong in the air, as you probably know, and very physical, but they've been caught in the counter-attack at home, and that's where Bournemouth will probably look to punish them, really. So Cardiff, when they push forward, will have to be really wary at the back again.
Cardiff, of course, as mentioned earlier on, just outside the playoffs at the moment. I know it's very, very early days, and you shouldn't really base a season on anything until after 15 games, really, should you? But what is the realistic targets that fans do believe can be achieved this year? Could you get back to the Premier League?
Well, not the way they performed against Coventry the other day. I'd say it's going to be very hard. If you look at the division already, it's taken shape, isn't it? With Fulham, West Brom looking strong, and you can say Bournemouth are up there as well. They're sort of teams. Cardiff just missed out on the playoffs last year, and I think their best bet will be top 10, I'd say. There was optimism at the start of the season. I think there was a lot of hope that they get in the playoffs. Keeping Kiefer Moore was a big boost, obviously, last month, which is a huge thing, keeping the transfer window. But they haven't really strengthened their squad, which people thought. They lost Harry Wilson, who was an ex-Cherry himself.
He was,
he blew hot and cold a bit last year, but I think he was playing a team which didn't suit him. He's showing at Fulham already that their style is suiting his play. So they lost Wilson, and they haven't really strengthened massively. They brought Ryan Giles on loan, who looks very good, actually, but he's out at the game tomorrow. He's got COVID, and he's had to miss the last couple of games as well. But they haven't really strengthened. They're relying on a lot of younger players, and as you know, with younger players, you just get one good performance, one bad performance, and that's the consistency which they're going to be missing, I think, which will mean they'll struggle, I think, to get the top 6 this year.
You do have Lee Tomlin, another former Cherry in your ranks there at Cardiff. He only played 6 games in our first season in the Premier League. How has he fared for the Bluebirds?
Very frustrating, because when he plays and he's on song, he's excellent. But he's injured again now. He's hardly pulled on a shirt, I cannot remember. He's been out for so long with various injuries. He's now, I think McCarthy mentioned today, he's had another groin operation, nothing major, but another minor operation today or this week. So he's out the game again. He hasn't played consistently for a while. Neil Harris got a tune out of him. He was excellent to Neil Harris. He lost a lot of weight. He came back. He looked fit and hungry. But he picked up an injury, and he just, again, in the playoffs, I think it was against Fulham, which is going back not last season, but season before now. And he's hardly played. And I think the fans are really frustrated with it, in that he's always injured. I think they're also frustrated that there's such a good player there as well. He's getting no younger, and I can't see him staying at the club long term unless he gets over his injury woes, because he just can't get on the pitch.
And I think there's something that's followed him throughout his career, really, hasn't it? And he's a good player. He's a good player when he's on song.
Player, and he's something that Cardiff really, really need in the final third, is where they have been relying on a lot of set pieces, and he brings something different. And when he has played, he does. He opens up space, grabs a goal. He's good at free kicks. He's just an excellent Championship player when fit. I think that's the key thing, when fit, and they just can't seem to get him fit. And he's been at the club, I think this is his third or fourth year now. So, I mean, his contract is at the end of the season. So unless he gets playing again, I can't see him staying at the club.
Fair enough. Do tell us a little bit more about the rest of the Cardiff side, because you've got a very strong, tall squad. And I think if I'm right in believing, it's the tallest in the Championship.
Yeah, I think everyone talks about Cardiff and set pieces and long throws and the most physical team, which they are. I mean, you look at it, they're Aidan Flint, 6'4", Morrison 6'3", Kiefer Moore 6'4". There's sort of 7 or 8 players, you'd say, who are over 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2". And that's what they rely on, really, and that's where they get a lot of their goals. If you look at their goals this year, long throws, corners, just piling the ball into the box. That was a frustrating thing against Coventry. Coventry defended really well, to be fair to them, but they went away from that game plan where they used to bombard the box. It's not pretty to watch. It's not going to win any admirers, but that's what makes them effective. And they went away from that against Coventry. They stopped doing long throws, which I found very surprising. And they lost their way, really. And that's what has been successful for them under McCarthy and even previously under Will Harris. Putting teams under pressure, not letting them leave their box. But so that's one thing Bournemouth obviously have to worry about, and that will be something which they'll cause a threat from set pieces. There's no doubt about that. I think they scored the most goals last year. They definitely scored the most goals last year by distance from set pieces and corners and free kicks. So, and again this year, I think their first 8 goals all headers, which is an unbelievable stat in the season. I think they obviously scored now with their feet, but I think the first 8, I think it's 8 goals, all from headers. So that's all from crosses, either an open play or from corners and free kicks. So I think that sums it up, really.
And that is our Achilles heel, to be honest. That really has been our Achilles heel last season. If I hark back to that game last year, which you did win, I believe it was set pieces again, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah. I think was it Morrison got the first a penalty? Was there Morrison got a header from the post in the corner, and then Kiefer Moore, I think, scored a penalty. Again, it was the two clubs were actually. I remember that evening, they were sort of going opposite directions at that time, weren't they? I think if you look at it, you were sort of stuttering a little bit, and Cardiff were on the rise, and then you obviously came back a bit towards the end to make the playoffs, and Cardiff didn't. But I remember that. At that stage of the season, if you were a betting man, you thought Cardiff will make the playoffs ahead of Bournemouth. Again, you know what threat they're going to pose. That's something I'm sure Bournemouth will be working on this week.
And I think that's something that has improved under Parker as well. But you do have a lot of talent in that squad. You got Leonardo Bacuna as well in the centre of midfield. How's he fared?
Well, Bacuna is a funny one, really, because he's been shifted from various positions. He's played under McCarthy, though. He's played on the right before of a wing back. He's played in the centre mid, which is his best position. But he's been moved forward by Mick McCarthy, and he's not done it forward. He's missed a few chances. He scored 1 goal against Blackpool this season, which he couldn't really miss, to be fair. He was there, obviously, the right place, the right time, but he couldn't really miss. He's not really done it for forward. He's not McCarthy sees something in him in the attacking third where he thinks he'll get you a few goals and assists, but he hasn't done it really. His best position is centre midfield, I think, is obvious. Again, and the fans have been getting on his back actually lately. So interesting. He's been injured as well last couple of games. He was meant to play against Forest and he pulled up in the warm-up with a groin problem. I think he's back tomorrow or back in the squad. So it'll be interesting to see where he does play him. But I think being further forward doesn't really suit his game.
One thing that I ask every single one of my guests, Darren, and you probably know what's coming, is a bit of a prediction. How do you believe it's going to go tomorrow afternoon?
It depends which Cardiff side turn up. As against Forest the other day, against obviously Forest were low on confidence and obviously the bottom of the table for a reason. But the second half, they were superb. The second half against Forest after pretty poor in the first half. I'm unfortunately a pessimistic supporter, which I'm sure a lot of people are. Some have a glass half empty, some full. I'm more of a half empty man. I'd be happy with a point, given where the two clubs have started this year. But I think Bournemouth will win 1 or 2-0. I've got a feeling that if they learn their lessons from Coventry and deal with the set pieces, which they did very, very well, then you'll have too much quality for Cardiff. I hope I'm wrong from a Cardiff point of view. So if it was me, I'd say 1 or 2-0 to Bournemouth.
I'm going for 2-1. I think we will concede a set piece. I think we will, because of the height, the strength. I think probably Morrison. I think Morrison again. He always seems to get one against us. But the thing, we do keep it on the floor, and we've got some talented youngsters now. So full of promise. But yeah, I'm going to go for 2-1. But no, I appreciate your honesty there, Darren. Not many people come on here and, you know.
No, I've seen both teams play. So against QPR the other day, who I think QPR are actually a good side and will be around that playoff area. It could have gone either way in the end, couldn't it? They could have nicked a draw. They probably should have at the end, a couple of chances. Yeah. But looking at the two teams, Brooks and Solanke, there's goals in that team for you going forward. And I worry about Cardiff on the break. That's when if they're pushing forward, it might just play into your hands. As the goals are proven this year at home, Bristol City in the last home game, they were caught out exactly the same on the counter-attack, down the channels, down the side of the three centre-halves, Flint, Morrison and Nelson, who are good in the air, strong, but not the quickest, and that's where you might expose them. So, yeah, I'm sticking with 2-1 or 1-0 to Bournemouth, 2-0 or 1-0 to Bournemouth, but I'm hoping obviously I'm proved wrong there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this opposition preview, Darren, and all the very, very best with journalism in the future, with Sunday Mirror and Reach as well. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye now.
And thank you, everybody, for joining me on this opposition preview show. Please do remember to hit the like, the subscribe and the bell button below to be alerted to any new videos we put out. Please do also watch the Raw reaction video with Jeff Stevenson from Only Fools and Horses and Touching the Blue. That video will be in the Raw reaction playlist. But until the next video, thank you for joining me, and up the Cherries.